Amaka's husband, Okechukwu, had suddenly passed away, leaving her with the burden of caring for their 4 children alone. She woke up before dawn each day to prepare Okpa, a staple dish she sold at the market to support her family. Her oldest son, Chibuzo, watched her sacrifices and grew to understand the responsibility he must one day carry. As each day passed, Amaka clung to the hope that if she can give Chibuzo an education, he might one day lift the family out of poverty. She dreamed of a better life for him, even if it means putting aside her own needs. Time passed and Chibuzo graduated from secondary school. Amaka wanted him to go to the university, but knew that continuing to send him to university would stretch her resources to the limits, and she might struggle to support her other children, but she believed he was her family's key to a brighter future. She sold what little values she had and took out loans from neighbors to cover his fees. Chibuzo, aware of the sacrifices his mother was making, promised to repay her kindness by helping educate his younger siblings once he's established. His siblings, alongside their mother, worked hard to support their family to allow him pursue his studies without financial worries. Years passed, and finally the day Amaka had dreamed of arrived. Chibuzo had graduated. When he returned home, his mother's heart flooded with pride. She believed all her struggles had been worth it. Chibuzo was equally grateful. He knew that he held his family's future in his hands. He was celebrated. Her father's kinsmen, who had shown support in their little ways since the death of their father, praised Amaka for her hard work. Chibuzo soon got a job, and with his new job, the family's situation began to improve. His siblings can now dream of attending university themselves, and Amaka finally felt a weight lifting off her shoulders. Not long after settling into his job, Ada, his friend from the college, became pregnant. Despite his commitment to his family, Chibuzo felt obligated to marry Ada, feeling torn between his new responsibilities and his family's expectations. Amaka, though not completely happy with the news, accepted Ada into her family. She hoped that the marriage won't interfere with the dreams she has for her younger children. However, she noticed Ada was struggling to fit into their tight-knit family. She does not seem to like the closeness between Chibuzo and his family. Amaka told her son about it, and he assured her that he will remain committed to his family. But the weight of these new responsibilities slowly began to shift his focus. As Chibuzo's responsibility as a husband and soon-to-be father increased, his visits to his family's home became less frequent. Though he continued to send financial support, the personal touch, the visits, the moments shared with his siblings, the conversations with his mother began to fade. Amaka perceived the change but tried to dismiss it. She told herself he was just busy. One weekend, Amaka decided to visit her son's home to see him and meet her daughter-in-law too. However, when she arrived, she was met with a frosty reception. Ada, her daughter-in-law, seemed inconvenienced by her visit and barely spoke to her. Chibuzo was happy to see his mother. They spent hours chatting and catching up on all the events that had transpired in the village during his absence. As they chatted and caught up, Ada paced back and forth across the house, just like a hungry lioness. Later that day, Amaka overheard Ada asking her son Chibuzo why she allowed her to visit. So because she suffered and saw you through school, she should kill you with burden? Does she not know that you started to build your own family? You better find a way to send her back to the village honorably, or I will do that myself. Amaka broke down in tears as she struggled to comprehend how the girl she had warmly welcomed into her home, without hesitation or reservation, could manipulate her own son against her. When Chibuzo came out and saw his mother crying, he tried to comfort her, but ultimately did little beyond ensuring she spent the night. The next morning, he gave her a small amount of money, barely enough to cover her transport back to the village. Amaka left with a heavy heart, Sensing that the family bond she had worked so hard to build was beginning to disintegrate. Back in the village, she tried to remain optimistic despite her recent visit's disappointing outcome. She reminded herself that although Chibuzo may have married someone she considered troublesome, he has new responsibilities now and maybe things will improve in time. She focused on her other children and encouraged them to excel in school so they can also pursue higher education. Meanwhile, Chibuzo's siblings had begun to notice his absence. His support dwindled and their plans to attend university seemed uncertain. They worried about their family's future but chose not to burden their mother with their concerns. Chibuzo's younger sister, Nneka, especially felt the impact as she was already in her second year of university. She reached out to her brother for help, only to receive polite but distant responses. Ada took full control over their household. Her family visited frequently and she encouraged Chibuzo to help them financially whenever possible. And on the rare occasion that Chibuzo mentioned his own family's needs, she became cold. "Why would you prioritize your mother and siblings over our own growing family?" she would ask. To avoid conflict, he began to send less and less to his family. "They will understand my situation," he said to himself. Over time, Ada began to manipulate him. She ensured that her family's needs were always met. One day, Amaka, who hadn't heard from her son in a while, decided to visit him again. She missed her son and hoped that, with time, Ada's attitude may have changed. But when she arrived, Ada barely acknowledged her presence. She seemed irritated by the visit and refused to let Amaka stay more than one night. She complained that the house was not big enough for guests. That evening, Ada criticized her. She told her that she was a burden and that her frequent visits disrupted their home. Those words of hers broke Amaka's heart, but she stayed quiet, having seen that her son had no say in his own home and did not want to cause him any more trouble. The next morning she left. This time the pain she felt was undeniable. Her son seemed like a stranger and Ada's hostility has broken her spirit. Although she claimed the house was too small for guests and her husband was overburdened with financial responsibilities, her family visited often and stayed for extended periods, during which she pressured Chibuzo to cater to their needs. Each time he failed to meet her expectations, she would accuse him of not caring about her family, using emotional manipulation to make him feel guilty until he gave in, often at the expense of his own family's needs. Meanwhile, back in the village, Amaka and her children continued to struggle. Nneka was uncertain about completing her education as her two younger siblings were now in secondary school, preparing for both junior and senior WAEC exams. The fees were exorbitant and their mother lacked financial support. Their uncles desperately wanted to help but had little to give. The small amount they provided could not alleviate their problems. They decided to visit their grandson and possibly call him to order, but upon arrival, Ada's hostility shocked everyone. She refused to let the elders into the house. She claimed they didn't announce their visit and shouldn't expect to be entertained without notice. The kinsmen, accustomed to traditional respect, were humiliated as they were forced to sit outside and wait for Chibuzo to return from work. When Chibuzo finally arrived, he was shocked to see his family members sitting outside like strangers. "Uncles, why are you all sitting here? Is my wife not in the house?" he asked, as he hurried to help them get up and move into the house. Ada pulled him aside and told him that they were just there to ask for money and disrupt their peace. Chibuzo weakly attempted to diffuse the situation, but ultimately allowed Ada to dictate the terms. The elders felt hurt and disappointed. When they got back to the village, they told Amaka how their journey went, and her heart broke even further at her son's behavior. Neighbors, seeing how hard Amaka has continued to work despite having a wealthy son, expressed their disappointment. Amaka was ashamed of the situation, so she stopped talking about her son to prevent people from speaking ill of him, but the pain was clear in her eyes. Nneka, who was once full of hope for her future, was now in her third year at university and struggling financially. She tried to reach out to Chibuzo, but her messages went unanswered. She felt her brother, who had promised to help her achieve her dreams, had forgotten her. At times, Chibuzo felt bad for his family, but Ada kept him distant from them. Whenever he considered reaching out or sending more financial support, she would remind him of the burden his family represents. Is it not better now that they have learned to live without you? You should rest and avoid being foolish by trying to care for those who have moved on, she said. His mother, Amaka, continued to work tirelessly to support her other children. She refused to let the bitterness overtake her, even though she now accepted that Chibuzo's priorities have changed. She prayed daily for her son, hoping he will one day see the damage his choices have caused. One day at the market, a regular customer who bought Okpa from her every morning and had heard about her son's wealth and lack of support, encouraged her to remain strong. Remember, she said, a mother's love is powerful and enduring. Amaka drew strength from these words and continued to support her children, hopeful that they would still have a chance to succeed, even if she had to carry the burden alone. She held on to her dignity and kept her struggles private and found solace in her faith and the love of her remaining children, who supported her as best they can. Amaka's strength inspired her younger children, who grew increasingly determined to make something of themselves. Nneka, despite her struggles, decided to take on part-time work while studying to ease her mother's burden. As time marched forward, Chibuzo realized that Ada has successfully destroyed his once strong relationship with his family. He questioned her treatment of his family and the privileges she granted to her own relatives. One day, during an argument, Ada told Chibuzo that if he was so unhappy, he should go back to his family in the village. Though she said it in anger, Chibuzo was stunned by her words. He realized that Ada may never truly understand the bond he shared with his mother and siblings. This conversation planted a seed of doubt in his mind as he began to reconsider his priorities and the influence Ada has over his life, and then recalled the sacrifices his mother had made for him and the dreams she had for their family's future. He remembered the moments she went without wrappers and shoes so he could have an education. The early mornings she spent preparing Okpa just to keep him in school and the pride she felt on his graduation day. These memories broke his heart. One morning he visited his mother in the village. Although he lived in a city 5 hours drive to his village, he never visited. So this visit surprised his mother. He hugged his mother and expressed his regrets and guilt. He told her he was ready to help his siblings complete their education. He gave her a significant sum and asked she forgave him for prioritizing his wife in a way that affected their family. When Ada learned about his visit to his mother, she reacted with anger and accused him of choosing his family over their marriage. She threatened to take their children and leave if he dares to go back to the village. Ada manipulated him by saying that his loyalty for his mother is a betrayal of their marriage. She reminded him that he promised to put their new family first. Chibuzo realized that she has been using emotional blackmail to keep him away from his family. He finally stood up for himself and his family and refused to be controlled by his wife Ada not anymore. Days passed and Christmas arrived. Chibuzo prepared to travel to his village with his family, but Ada insisted on going to her parents' home, hoping to manipulate Chibuzo again. But to her greatest surprise, he sternly warned her not to step foot outside their home, threatening that if she do, it would mean the end of their marriage. Chibuzo left Ada and their children and traveled to spend Christmas with his mother and siblings. They had a wonderful time, chatting, feasting, and making the most of the holiday. His mother seized the opportunity to encourage him to find a way to balance his life wisely. Ada, spending Christmas alone with the children in the city, realized that Chibuzo's newfound commitment to his family would threaten her control over him. When Chibuzo finally arrived, she confronted him and demanded that he choose between her and his family. Though he loved his wife and children, he knew he could not turn his back on his mother and siblings again. He calmly told Ada that he was unwilling to abandon his family and that he would continue to support them. Ada, shocked and furious, threatened to leave. But Chibuzo stood his ground. He explained that he intended to be a good husband and father, but he would also honor the sacrifices his mother had made. I can help your family, but can't help mine with my own money. Is that not witchcraft? He drew a firm boundary and refused to let Ada manipulate him further. Back in the village, Amaka prayed daily for Chibuzo and his young family. She wished for Ada to come to value their family. Chibuzo's support enabled his younger siblings to progress in their education. Nneka soon graduated, and with his influence she got a job at the city. Ada, feeling alienated and bitter, decided to test Chibuzo's commitment by withholding affection and support at home. She threatened him with separation, hoping he would break and prioritize her demands. But Chibuzo faced the challenge with a calm resolve and refused to let Ada's behavior affect his relationship with his family. He chose to endure the hardships with patience and hoped that Ada would come to appreciate his devotion to both his family and their marriage. This continued for a long time, and one day Ada remembered how supportive Chibuzo had been to her and her family. She thought to herself, why can't he help his own family since he helps mine? She realized that her animosity towards his family and her sense of entitlement has caused her happiness in her home. One afternoon, she visited their village while Chibuzo had gone to work to see his mother. She sought to reconcile with her meek mother-in-law. Amaka was glad to see her. She had prayed and hoped for that day for a long time. She welcomed her with warmth. She told her that she had forgotten everything and she should let all that had happened be in the past. She went further to tell her that she had brought her children up to love one another, not just because of what they could gain, but because they are all they've got. I had trained my son to university so he could get a job and help cater for his siblings. But if he hadn't got the job, would my other children have gone hungry? Or would I have stopped caring for him? My daughter, the answer is no. I would have still done my best for them all. Don't ever think that we don't welcome you because we felt he was obligated to us. Even though I needed financial support, I wanted more peace in my family. Ada sincerely apologized to her mother-in-law and peace was restored in their family, and she fully embraced her role within the extended family. She became a caring daughter-in-law to Amaka and a supportive sister-in-law to Chibuzo's siblings. She encouraged her husband to visit the village often, to see his family and sometimes invite them to the city. As time marched relentlessly forward, together Ada and Chibuzo decided to put Amaka on their payroll. However, Amaka still wanted to continue her Okpa business. They supported her decision, and with their financial backing, she was able to run her business with ease, finally having time to rest. Amaka, though growing older, found joy in the well-established and capable supportive family she had built. Chibuzo and Ada instilled in their own children the importance of family bonds and respect for elders. They wanted their children to understand that love and sacrifice are the foundation of true happiness, hoping to inspire them to carry forward these values into future generations. Time passed and the entire family came together to celebrate Amaka's 70th birthday. Chibuzo, Ada, their children, and all of Amaka's grandchildren traveled to the village, along with extended family and friends. The celebration was filled with laughter, music, and gratitude, as everyone reflected on the journey they have taken together. Amaka looked around at her family, her heart overflowed with pride and joy. She knew that her husband's legacy lives on through each of them and that the unity she fought so hard to protect will continue for generations. Chibuzo expressed his gratitude for his mother's sacrifices and acknowledged that her love and support had kept them together.